This is a training video to explain for agents some of the more subtle aspects of making tax digital, particularly for VAT, but a lot of this also applies for other aspects of making tax digital. When there are problems with the agent services account or on particular VAT numbers, it is often useful to get to the bottom of what the problems are. One of the first points is, if a VAT account is signed up to making tax digital, then it stops being possible to use the old portal to submit the VAT return. And there can be two reasons for getting the 403 error. One is not joining making tax digital, and the second one is not using open authorization to authorize it. Now, let me explain a little bit first about these error numbers. At the nub of the system, the MTD software, whichever software it is that you're using, is talking to HMRC's servers. And it does that using the Hypertext Transfer Protocol, HTTP, which is used for the internet, for web access. And when it successfully contacts the APIs, it gets a response code or error code, but the response code of 200 or 201 is actually not an error. When you have those response codes, everything's working properly. The difficulty is when things are not working properly, and you can get response codes 400 if the data's in a bad structure in some form, 403 when it's not authorized, and again that can be two different causes, either not being in making tax digital or also not having properly authorized the account for the wrong scope. And then you can have 404, which means the data's not there, and 401, which means the data doesn't exist. It's important to know whether you're getting a 404 error or a 403 error to know what you have to do to change things. And one way of doing that is to look it up using MTD software. And one of the important points is you don't have to keep only one copy of MTD software. You can authorize more than one type of MTC software on the same accounts. So your ASA can be authorized, say, for QuickBooks, VAT Direct and Sage, and you can use VAT Direct if you wish to look up things relevant to the QuickBooks accounts. Now, one of the pages we have is the Manage VAT Information page, and this is a live one, in fact, for me. And here it looks up all of the three main initial looking up APIs, the obligations list, the VAT payments and VAT liabilities. And if you change the dates, so if we change the date here from 2018 to, say, the 11th of March 2019 and tab out of that, it then talks to HMRC's servers, and as you can see, it gets less information. This is a live account, in fact my account. You can look up, for instance, whether you only have open obligations, where there are none in that period. Alright. Actually, that's because I put a space in front of the O. There we go. Or whether you can only look up fulfilled obligations. And one of the clever things about this, if you are using an agent services account, is you can change the VAT numbers. If I change the VAT number to one that doesn't exist, we then get a 403 forbidden error. You can see this coming down here. 403 forbidden. Now, that gives you some idea of where these numbers come from. With VAT Direct, when things go wrong, we give you a lot of information with a view to trying to find out what's going on. And you can see here the responses. With this one is client or agent not authorized. In fact, it's an invalid VAT number. Now, if instead we go back to the previous VAT number, which we know is a valid one, it happens to be me, we'll get rid of that. And we then change the dates. Let's change the dates so that we haven't got a VAT obligation. Let's try, for instance, only open obligations, and we'll have an open obligation with a date up to March. And you can see here we get a 404 error, not a 403 error, and that is an error saying data not found. Now, with obligations, which is the key thing, because without an obligation you can't submit a VAT return, if you are getting a 404 error, that means that you are correctly authorised, but that there isn't that information. And what HMRC do for VAT returns is that they put in obligations into their computer system so you can submit against them. And we know from time to time this doesn't exactly work as it's supposed to work. So it's very helpful to know whether you're getting a 404 error, data not found, or a 403 error, which means it's the wrong number, or it's not authorised, or it's not joined, because you know where the problem's likely to be. For a 403 error, the problem rests probably with yourselves or the client not setting things up properly. With a 404 error, the problem rests probably with HMRC. Now, in this instance, we know, because of the way we've done it, actually it's because we're asking for something that doesn't exist, because those VAT returns have been submitted, and if we use the same range of dates we get some fulfilled obligations rather than outstanding obligations. Now I am going to look at the issue of scopes and authorities. You will already have seen, almost certainly, the grant authority process, where you can grant authority for different things. For example, there is a view VAT information authority, which is actually called read VAT, and there is a change VAT information authority called write VAT. There is also one for saying hello, and that's used to distinguish between situations where an account has or has not joined MTD, because hello will work without joining MTD. But there is also, down the bottom of this page, a useful link which says you can remove authorities. In fact, you can click on that without removing authorities, and it will then take you to this page here. And it will tell you, this is running a test application because it shows a few more things. It then shows you which software you have granted authority to. And you can grant authority, of course, to more than one piece of software. And that authority can be for a range of things. And in this instance, we've got all of this information authorised in the test system, of course. Estates, for trusts and estates, read VAT, say hello, trusts information, self-assessment, VAT, and viewing self-assessment. And obviously we can then go on, if needs be, to remove authority. And then after you remove authority, that particular application cannot interact on your behalf with HMRC. And it's a useful thing to know to do that, but most importantly, it's useful to see what you actually have authorised on any particular account, be it a gateway account or the ASA account, because that way you can find out what's going on. So there's two things to look at. Firstly, a little bit of a greater look at the issue of error numbers and how to track error numbers. And secondly, how to look at authorisations, remove authorisations, and see which scopes, which types of activity you've authorised external software to handle.